For this training analysis, we are going to be talking about Faith. Faith is the main character of the Mirror's Edge duology, the two games that Mirror's Edge was able to have produced. We're going to be taking a lot from the first Mirror's Edge, and we're going to be taking a little bit from Catalyst. And I guess it's a fair warning, there are probably going to be spoilers to both games in this video. The last video I made about Faith was more of an exploration on what we can learn from the runners and how they interact with their society. Because of their athletic abilities, runners have a level of freedom far beyond what the average citizen of their city has. But this time we're going to be talking specifically about Faith. We're going to look at how we can adopt some of her skills, mainly parkour, and we're going to see that maybe she is more realistic, more of an attainable goal than she might at first appear. Faith is a citizen or an outlaw of a dystopian city. The City of Glass is very surveillance heavy. There are lots of cameras, and the blues, as they're referred to, the cops, are very strict on what people are allowed to do. A commenter informed me on my last video about Faith that the city did not actually have a name, or it wasn't named Glass, until Catalyst came out. I appreciated the comment, it was a good clarification, and it shows how, even though Catalyst has its flaws, they really were building up to something in that second game. The first game was great, the second game you could tell that they really had a story that they wanted to tell. But you might be asking, what is a runner? What was Faith? What does she do? A runner could be thought of best as a courier, as a delivery person. They deliver messages and items that the clients don't want the government to be aware of. So to do her job, Faith has to use her parkour skills, she has to use her athletic cardiovascular abilities to traverse the city to get from point A to point B. So with our world slowly becoming more authoritarian, a little bit more oppressive, let's see what we need to do to be able to run away from the blues. Faith's position as a runner requires a high level of cardiovascular endurance and a high level of fitness in general. But wild as it may be, Faith's skills are very realistic. We could say that most of what she does is achievable and has been done by a lot of real life people. We're going to talk about this more when we get into the realism section, but it does help to set the tone to know that a lot of this can be done if you don't care too much about your safety and if you dedicate a solid amount of time to training. I wasn't able to find what I felt were accurate citations on Faith's height and weight, but I did find this really cool poster, so we're gonna go with this poster. Faith is a woman of unknown height and weight. She is able to quickly accelerate to a speed of about 15 miles per hour. She can maintain that for an indefinite amount of time. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. She's also capable of throwing full-grown men around, and a lot of these men are wearing SWAT-like armor, so they are a little heavier than the average guy. Now, in the first game, Faith was a little bit more realistic. She was very quickly overwhelmed if she was facing more than one enemy at a time, so you had to be very careful about how you approached enemies, and you had to use the environment to make sure only one person had a line of sight on you at any given time. In the second game, she basically turns into Batman. No one is a physical threat to her. I didn't realize how much I disliked this until I replayed the games for this video, but I really did enjoy Faith being a little weaker, a little bit more down to earth. I get what Catalyst was going for, but I just enjoyed a more realistic Faith, where combat and where the enemies felt dangerous. And of course, even though these are mostly realistic distances, Faith makes jumps that are just scarily far. If you consider making those jumps, if you were able to do those things, you might have a couple of screws loose. Now, what does that say about some of the people I'll mention later? I don't know. I think they're pretty awesome, but her ability to overcome her fear is next level. I'll also say in Catalyst, it does seem like she's able to jump further than she was able to in the first game, and it also seems like she's able to take falls from a higher height than she was in the first game. Not by much, but, and it could be the point of view as well, maybe the FOV has changed, but it does seem like she's able to fall from a little further before the dying animation plays. I'd say in general she's able to handle falls from about 20 feet, and because she is a master of the parkour roll, that is why she can walk away from these giant falls. The roll dissipates the kinetic energy that she builds up as she's falling through the air. Personally, I find her parkour abilities the most interesting part of her skill set, and I would also argue that they are the most achievable part of her skill set. She's able to vault over many different objects with ease. She's able to jump from wall to the top of a ceiling and pull herself up. These things serve as no obstacle to her. They barely slow her down. And she's also capable of wall running pretty far. I do feel like she can wall run even in the first game quite a bit farther than real life humans can. She's also able to take more steps than most people can. With wall running, the first 2 steps that you take are what really get you your horizontal distance. They're what get you going. Some people are able to take a third and very, very rarely a 4th step, but a lot of times those last 2 steps don't add anything to the distance that you're covering. They just look cool. And in some cases, they can actually compromise the distance that you would have made just because you're putting less effort into actually covering that distance. And then, of course, she's also able to tic-tac. She's able to jump from one wall to another wall to another wall to get to a higher height. This move requires that the walls are within relatively close distance to each other, but overall, it's a pretty useful, very realistic move. We don't have a ton of information about Faith's combat training. It looks like she started training as a teenager, at least as per the comics for the first game. We don't know how she learned to fight. We just know that someone taught her. But to me, her training seems to be pretty legit. Her moves look pretty close to Krav Maga. Sometimes there looks like there's some judo involved, and then, because I think a lot of kicks pull from Taekwondo, looks like she has a little bit of Taekwondo going on as well. But either way, her combat is tighter than it would be if she was just a street fighter, if she was just a brawler. I'm also going to point out, just because I've always been bothered by this and I think this is hilarious, in the first game, if you finish out her punching combo, she'll punch out with both arms. And I think that is the goofiest, funniest thing I have seen maybe ever in a video game. When it comes to fighting, at least. It just looks silly. I'm not saying that no combat style has a 2-arm punch or no kata or whatever. Maybe it's not a practical move, but it's something that traditional martial arts will do for training. I just haven't seen it. If anybody knows where this comes from or can think of any reason why this is a thing, please let me know, because it's bothered me forever. Like I said, Faith takes a lot, in my opinion, from Krav Maga. Her gun disarms look a lot like Krav Maga. They look a lot about grabbing the weapon, redirecting it so that way she's out of the line of fire, and then hitting her opponent and taking the weapon from them. And then we talked about how she seems to favor kicks. She seems to kick quite a bit. I think there's a heavy leaning toward Taekwondo. There's an interesting move that she'll do where she will kick above the enemy's head, loop around, and pull them down by their neck. Again, I would be really interested to know if anyone knows where this is from, if you can name what kind of kick this is. The closest thing that comes to mind is that this is just the flashy choreography fighting style that characters like Black Widow use. But it looks really cool. I would really hope that it has some basis in reality. So if you know where it's from, please let me know. Now, I'm going to argue that Faith has no firearm training. You can play devil's advocate if you want, and you can say that she shoots very well when I'm playing the game. Well, yeah, but that's probably because you play a lot of shooters, and you are just good at shooting. For Faith in general, I couldn't find much evidence to her having any real training with guns, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that runners don't seem to use a lot of guns. Supposedly, the blues are relatively chill on most days, and just when the events of the games are taking place, they're more aggressive. The comics kind of make me think that they are always trigger happy, but in general I understand that the runners may not want to start an actual war with the blues, and running around with a gun and shooting people is a very good way to make the cops way more aggressive towards you. So I don't think Faith has any incentive to be good with a gun. To summarize, I believe that Faith has a lot of training in Krav Maga, a little bit of training in Taekwondo and Judo, and almost no actionable training with firearms. Now, Faith's cardio is her standout trait. She is a runner. Her job revolves around getting from point A to point B as fast as possible. She's running all day. I can't remember how, if it was in the first game or the second game. I couldn't get it to work this time around, but I do remember a setting where I could see how fast I was going in the game. And I remember that it would cap out when running at 15 miles per hour. As I always harp on, I think it's hilarious that video game characters, most of them can run forever. I think a lot of that is funnier when you look at characters who are jogging forever and then they have a limit on how fast they can sprint. It's just funny to me. But I think Mirror's Edge does a really good job of actually covering up how Faith can run forever at max speed. There are very few areas where you can just go in a straight line indefinitely. Faith almost always has to jump over something, vault over something, make a turn. She always has to do something that slows her down. And this makes Faith seem very realistic. She can run at a full sprint for about as long as a normal person can, and then she has to do something that slows her down, and it just builds on that realism. And depending on your experience with running, 15 miles an hour may sound really fast, it may not sound very fast. You've seen videos of people running 20, 22 miles per hour, and then of Usain Bolt and people like him who are just ridiculously fast. But when you think about it, Faith is running in the real world. She's running on uneven terrain, she's running probably with a delivery with a package on her person, and she has to prepare for her next vault, for her next jump, for her next move. That's very different from running max speed on a high school track. So I would argue that Faith probably could run quite a bit faster than 15 miles an hour if it was just a straight foot race. But considering all of the variables, 15 miles an hour is probably the fastest she can go and still safely react to her environment. We have no information at all on what Faith eats. I think there was one comic scan of her drinking some coffee. Creators, writers, authors don't love to talk about what people eat. I get it, it's boring. It is what it is. But I'm still going to extrapolate. I'm going to guess. I would argue that because of Faith's activity, because of her build, she's obviously either at maintenance or consistently burning more calories than she brings in. Considering the high intensity of her job, she probably burns quite a bit more calories than a normal person. She probably burns around 2,500 or 2,600 calories a day. I would want to see Faith eating something healthy. I would want to see her eating a lot of plants, a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit, and a good amount of some protein source. I would want her to get close to 120, maybe 130 grams of protein a day, just so that way the intensity of the running, the pulling, the jumping doesn't break her body down so much that she cannot recover. Because that's the thing about running. It will put a lot of pressure, a lot of high impact forces on your joints. Sprinting is on the higher end of that, but jogging can do the same thing as well. So you want to make sure that you have very good form when you're doing these things. You want to make sure that you are eating enough so your body can recover. And that's not even considering the parkour that she does, the falls that she takes. We'll talk a little bit more about falling and longevity a little bit later, but needless to say, that is something that can be very dangerous if your body is not fully fueled and ready to handle it. Now again, this is just my projection. Faith might eat their version of McDonald's every single day, but this is what I would like to see. Now, Faith's physique is perfect. It is spot on to a runner. She looks like people I know in real life who are probably about the same height and weight, if we're being honest, who run. Now, personally, I would like to see Faith have a little bit more muscle mass than what she seems to have. This is my preference in general, but definitely when it comes to fictional women who are fighting, who are doing high physical levels of activity, I want to see them have a little bit more muscle definition. So that's the only critique I could have, is I would like to see her look a little bit more like a Lorena or a Richardson level of muscle mass, especially when you consider the parkour that she does. Now, Faith's psychology is a little difficult to talk about. We don't have enough to go on, in my opinion, because EA killed the game series a little too quickly. But what we do know is that Faith is very rebellious. She has a lot of issues with authority. In the original comic series, she was annoyed and angry at her sister for becoming a cop. In the second comic book series, she basically ignored whatever any authority figure ever told her to do. She always did her own thing. And this got her into a lot of trouble. She ended up owing some people debts that she probably would never realistically be able to pay back. But I think it says a lot about her that she was very headstrong, very stubborn, but she was always going to do her own thing. And when you look at that world in general, where authority is almost always oppressive and restrictive and destructive, Faith is probably on the right track. You probably should question what people tell you to do and be a little rebellious. And we see that Faith is also very resilient. She was in prison, I believe, for 2 years, and she popped back up, came out of prison like nothing. We see signs that the cops were abusive to her while she was in prison, but she jumped right back into her day job without missing a beat. For Realism, after playing both games, I noticed that Faith is basically a real person. Obviously, she is unrealistic when it comes to her ability to heal from gunshot wounds, but besides that, she's pretty close to what a person can achieve. I will say again that her wall running is a little too far. Some of the jumps she takes go a little too far, and some of the heights that she falls from are a little too high. Then, of course, she fights way too many people at once, especially in the second game. I should say her gun disarms are also unrealistic. Gun disarms are always a high-risk move. You should never do them unless you're afraid that you're going to die. And the fact that she can do them so consistently, assuming the player gets them right, at least story-wise, it seems like she does them consistently, it is pretty unrealistic. At some point, she'd mess up, get shot, and the story would be over. But again, when it comes to her physical capabilities of parkour, of running, she's pretty spot on. To put things in perspective, her 100-meter dash time would be about a 13-second run. And that's not very difficult to achieve in real life. And even though I say that some of her drops are from heights that are a little too high, I still think for the most part that's pretty close. Years ago, there was some debate about how high of a height could a parkour roll save you from? How far could you fall? And it seemed like the answer came out to be about 30 feet. Some people maybe brought it down to 20 feet. But what I noticed is that was back before a lot of people started really strength training. And now that we see a lot of more people doing the squats, doing the front squats, doing Olympic weightlifting to supplement their parkour, I do wonder, for the guys out there who have the perfect form for the role, and they're out there, they're lifting very heavy weight, they have very strong legs, and of course they're more committed to the sport than they are of longevity, how high could they fall from? What's their max height? In my personal opinion, I do think it ends up being around a 30-foot fall, and I do believe you could do that on concrete. I think you have to prepare for years. I think you need to be Dom, one of the Doms, to do it. You got to be either Dom Tomasio or Joe Scandrett, but I do think it could be done. There's only so many times you can do that before, you're in your 40s with a knee replacement. But if you're a runner, if you're a person who engages in a high-risk sport, sometimes you do put that hunter mindset of, I'm going to take everything I can get now, and whatever happens after that happens. You take that mindset and you put it above, well, what's going to happen to me when I'm in my 40s, when I'm in my 50s? And I think that's commendable. If that's the kind of person that you are, where you're willing to give it all in one go to achieve something really cool, yeah, that's pretty awesome. So for the people with that mindset who are very skilled athletes, who are very strong, I think they could take falls from much higher than what we normally see. That doesn't mean that you should do it, doesn't mean that I should do it, but I just think that it is possible. And then Faith's build, her physique is perfect. Personally, I want to see her with more muscle, but I know people who run and they look like her. Her build matches her physical activity, and it's achievable in real life. I have no real complaints about that. Okay, so we talked about how awesome Faith is. Now, what can you do to be a little more awesome yourself? Well, first you can go and see how fast you are. Go find a track and go hit that 100-meter dash and see what your speed is. Time yourself, use this equation that I have posted somewhere in the video. Hey, it's me from the future. There is no equation. You've been bamboozled. If you want to know how fast you are, I provided a website link in the description below. If you want to find other websites that let you do these conversions, just Google it, and you'll be able to see what your miles per hour is. Once you figure out what your miles per hour for the 100-meter dash is, you're going to be in a really good spot to move forward. You can do a couple different things. You can focus on improving that 100-meter dash, 100-yard dash, whatever, or you can look into a slightly longer distance and look at that 400-meter run. See how fast your time is for that. Work on improving that. Both fit very well with the theme of what Faith does. They're building speed over short distances that would be relevant during a chase. Now, if you're going to do that, if you're going to focus on those short distances, I would strongly recommend finding a sprinting coach or just really doing the research. Like I said, sprinting is a high impact activity. You can very easily hurt yourself. So find somebody who can help you or make sure you know your stuff. I'm a personal trainer. I can help you get stronger. I can help you lose weight. I can probably help you get a little bit faster, but I can't help you with sprinting. I don't know that well enough to give advice. Maybe one day I will, but at the moment, my best advice is to find somebody who knows what they're doing. Another option, another way you can look at this is that Faith delivers things. She goes from point A to point B. And sometimes that's going to be a few miles away. She operates in a downtown city area. So you can look at a longer distance and think about mastering the 5K. If you have no running experience at all, this is where I suggest that you start. Get couched to 5K, complete that program. It does not matter how long it takes, just complete it, get to the end goal, and then focus on having a very solid 5K time. You might run farther than 3 miles. But for me personally, I think 3 miles is all I care about improving. I'll run the longer distances, but I don't care about my performance for those longer distances. But the 5K is a very good starting point. And once you're comfortable with that, you have your sprinting coach. You could even periodize. You can spend one part of the year mastering your 5K, getting that faster and faster. You can spend another part of the year getting your 400 meter or your 100 meter dash faster and faster. You can go back and forth, and next thing you know, you're just fast. Of course, Faith is more than just her cardio. As I always suggest, you should find some type of martial art, some type of combat sport to train. What does that look like? Well, for Faith, that looks like finding Krav Maga school nearby. Krav Maga can be hit or miss. Some schools are really on point, some are scams. So go for a week or two, see what they teach, make sure it's actionable, make sure that there's some pressure testing, and maybe stick with that. If it's not what you're looking for, you can always fall back towards a kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA gym, because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of fighting is anyway, is just mastering the punching and the kicks. But Krav Maga is going to also give you the weapon disarms, which you still need to be very careful about doing, but at least you'll have them in your arsenal of tools. A good Krav Maga school will also focus on the mindset that you need. They're going to be very much about get a couple hits in and then run away. And I think that works really well with the theme of Faith, of Mirror's Edge, and it works really well with the cardio training that you're doing on the side, where you're doing the 5K, or you're doing the 100 meter or the 400 meter dash. You're going to be very fast. So you can learn how to punch really good, and then you can run away really fast. And then as for strength training, normally I really go into this when I make the workout programs. But I think realistically for a Faith type of program, this is just a supplement. If you go too hard on your strength training, it's going to impact your sprinting, it's going to impact your cardio, your running. So since this is about Faith, this is purely just a supplement. That said, I think the exercises that work very well for this type of theme are some type of vertical pull. So you're going to do something like pull-ups or something like a lat pull down, but either way, those have very obvious transitional benefits towards parkour. Then you'll probably want a horizontal pull. That's going to help you get a little bit better at keeping things close to you, keeping your body close to a wall, and then it's good for shoulder health in general. Then to balance that out, you'll want a horizontal push, so maybe push-ups or a bench press. It's up to you. I think in the program, I have put push-ups as the horizontal push. This is really more of a supplement than it normally is. It's just to balance out the pulling, just to make you a little bit more balanced. And then you're going to want a type of squat. So you're going to want something that's going to build your quads. For this, I think a front squat could be pretty solid. But I think the winner is actually going to be the Bulgarian split squat. Bulgarian split squats also fit with the theme of a runner who doesn't have the most equipment. It does not take very much weight to make a Bulgarian split squat suck in a actionable and useful rep range. Then you're going to also want something to target the hamstrings. If you have a full-on gym, you'll want to look at hamstring curls. If you don't, you'll want to look into Romanian deadlifts, or maybe even one-legged Romanian deadlifts, just depending on how much weight you have available. But those hamstrings, getting them stronger, that's going to improve your ability to run, and it's going to help keep you from being so fragile. It might protect you from some injuries. And then you'll want your glutes to be stronger, because glutes can help, ironically, or maybe counterintuitively, keep your knee from hurting. Romanian deadlifts are also going to target the glutes as well. And then you really don't want to skip calves. You want to take them seriously. Those can help keep you from twisting your ankle. They can help with your deceleration when you land from a fall. They're going to be very important for this type of physical activity. And then to finish out, I would strongly recommend parkour. Now, if you're doing this for aesthetic reasons, if you want to look like a runner, if you want to look slim and lean, then everything I've said so far is really all you need to take from this video. But don't limit yourself to just how you look. Don't limit yourself to just the basic normal physical activities. Parkour is extremely useful. It's very good at teaching you how to control your body. You could think of it as the martial art of running away. So you're going to want to look into parkour. And the thing about Faith is she does not free run. She does parkour. She doesn't do unnecessary but very, very cool flips. Everything she does is to get her from point A to point B. So she does a lot of simple vaults, like speed vaults or monkey vaults, and those would be what you could learn pretty quickly, actually. A couple of different vaults, like the speed vault, the monkey vault, the thief vault, and then learn and master that parkour roll. Get some vertical wall running under your skill set, and you'll be good to go. You don't need a lot of skills to be good at simple, pure parkour. Running Street Stunts is an excellent YouTube channel that has a lot of videos that teach a lot of parkour and a lot of free running. Go through his parkour only videos and you'll be set. It won't take you very long to be good at parkour. In the description below, I've included the full routine along with a schedule for the running and for the martial arts, and of course, obviously, the strength training with sets and reps. I've also decided I'm going to include a link to the program on Boost Camp. I'm not sponsored by Boost Camp. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I like making programs on Boost Camp. It's a really easy way to make programs, and it does look a little prettier than just Google Sheets. So if you want to download the app, or if you're already using the app, you can click on that link. And if you already are using the app, you can search my name, Christian Hall, look under programs created by a user, and you'll find things like my Abby workout program or my Faith workout program. So I would strongly recommend that you check those programs out. They're free, whichever way you decide to get them. Just know that they're not so much about building size. They're not even really so much about building strength. They're more just a supplement to you running, to you becoming a better functional runner. The next video that I'm going to put out is going to be about Red Hood. I am looking forward to that video so much. I'm trying to make all of these little videos more of a love letter to that character. I hope that shows. If you like Faith, if you like Aloy, if you like any of the characters I talk about, then I hope you feel that when you watch the video. This Red Hood video, I'm super excited for it. So I hope you like that video. I hope you like this video. But yeah, that's it. I am done talking.